So I have just a couple of announcements. The first is if you are not muted, please do mute yourself just for the courtesy of everyone else while our presenters are sharing their presentation with us. If you have a question, we're going to ask you to write down your question and hold it till the end. So we want to make sure we get through this entire presentation. And so you can either raise your hand or you can write a question in the chat. We do have chat monitors, or at the end of the presentation, we'll take some questions. We have an announcement of a water quality related community cleanup. So there's a Hamakua Canal Community Cleanup 2024. And I'll just share this announcement. It's brief. It's from one of our community members who often comes to these meetings, Sydney Wesley. And so Martin Luther King Day, which is this coming Monday from 8 to 11, community members are welcome to join this Martin Luther King Day service event to help clean waterways and embankments around the Hamakua wetland in Kailua. Please meet at 268 Hamakua Drive to sign in, gather cleaning supplies and trash bags. Free kayaks will be provided by Kailua Beach Adventures for volunteers to clean the canal. And for questions or more information, please contact the organizer, Sydney Wesley, at sbwesley, WESTLEY, @gmail.com. So this is something that Sydney was doing annually. Now it looks like it might be twice a year. A lot of folks come out. It's fun. It's educational. I'm sure the water loves it and all the water birds love it. The wetland loves it. So if you are free on Monday morning, please come out and join the cleanup. Okay, what I am going to do with the agenda, usually we have resident and community concerns. I'm going to ask my committee members if you are okay with holding that, just because this is a special meeting and we have guests here. Would it be okay if we go directly to the presentation by Dr. Boehm and Sarah? Are you okay with that, Evan? Okay, all right. I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Okay, I don't think there's anything else I've forgotten. I will just check my notes. Oh, one other announcement is at the February 2024 meeting, we will be getting a deeper dive into a stormwater infrastructure project that will take place in Ka'elepulu watershed. And this is something that the community, we are going to learn about the project, but we advocated for the capital improvement funds, which our councilwoman Esther Kia'aina got us. So I think it's 1.6 million for a project to help mitigate stormwater runoff. So Department of Facilities Maintenance of the city is going to present at the neighborhood board meeting on the first Thursday, and it will be a concise presentation. And then they are coming to our committee the second Thursday to do a more deeper dialogue with us, where we can ask questions and find out how our monies are going to be used, and if the degree to which this is going to help offset stormwater and pollution into the waterways. So please put that on your calendars. Yes, whoever's raising their hand, is that you, Kate? Kellyanne.
Yeah. So I was wondering if this is going to be like, are they doing a different presentation? Because they've already presented that project, the one with the underground on the road thing. I don't even know what it's called, but it was like a permeable road surface or something that holds water. Is that the same project?
So this is not the one near Kalapawai. It's not that. This is a new project. And they gave us a very brief, Mr. Randall Wakamoto gave us a very brief overview at last month's neighborhood board meeting. But they're going to come with pictures and, graphics and probably explain some of the engineering behind it. And so it'll be more detailed than what they can do in front of the 19-member neighborhood board on at that first meeting. So definitely, if you're interested, I would encourage you to attend that as well. Okay, so yes. I would like to introduce Ali and Sarah and ask them if they are ready to go. Remember, everyone, please do mute yourself. Please write down questions. And I also wanted to just say that this is a introduction, right? This is just the beginning of this study. It hasn't been done yet. And so things are still kind of in formation. I think we should be reminded of that. And of course, we will ask Ali and Sarah and her team to come back periodically as they have findings and um, you know, they have discovery of their research. We'll ask them to share that with us. And then our part, which is absolutely necessary to this process, is that we will need to probably come forward and advocate and do some community organizing based on what the results are. So, you know, a lot of folks think this is such a big issue and such a big topic to tackle, but your presence here is really part of it, right? And we are informing ourselves. And I always say, if we are informed, we are empowered. So this is just the beginning. I went to school with Ali. I've known her since 6th grade. She was always very smart. And I'm so happy when she asked, you know, for me to help organize the community around this. And she said, you know, I really care. This is a beach that I surf at. We would like to do this study. Sarah is doing it, I believe, as part of her PhD. And so we are so fortunate to have them both Zooming in from California this evening. And I'm going to turn it over to Ali. And if anyone has questions, I can't see the chat screen right now, but please do send me a message in the chat and I'll save it and I will get back to you, include your contact information as well. Okay, Ali, I'm turning it over to you and I'm going to mute.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Welcome.
That's the best introduction I've ever had. I love it. So I want to introduce Sarah to you guys. She's not going to present. She's actually sick and coughing a lot. So she's going to be muted and she's probably going to turn off her camera because she's coughing so much. But yeah, I have a picture of her. So this is me. Like a while ago, I look a lot younger here, but I grew up in Kailua. I paddled for Lani Kai. I worked at Island Snow and I got fired because I wouldn't work on a Wednesday night because I said I had too much homework. I went to Iolani with Levani, and then I went to the mainland to Caltech and then UC Irvine for college and grad school. And I've been a professor at Stanford for over 20 years. And my specialty is water quality research. I study nutrient pollution, pathogen pollution in the environment. And I've done water quality research before on Oahu. We studied all the different streams around the entire island. I have done a lot of work on Kauai on the North Shore. I worked with the Hanalei Watershed, Hui, and Waipaw Foundation on water quality in Hanalei for a number of years. And then I've also done a little bit of work on the Big Island, but most of my research is in California. And I've also worked in low and middle income countries like in Tanzania and Africa, South America, and other places. So I was really excited to sort of think about doing this study, which was inspired by my friend Jenny Lum and her daughter who live near Castle Beach and were interested in the water quality there. And I'll introduce Ella in a little bit. Sarah is a PhD candidate, and that's what she looks like in that picture if you didn't see her screen. She works on pathogens and fecal indicators in water systems. And she's going to be doing this as part of her PhD work. Ella Lum, who goes to Punahou. She lives near Castle Beach. She's a high school student. She's on this Zoom call. Ella, I don't know if you want to turn on your screen. She is going to be helping with this project at her house and collecting samples. I'll explain the plan in a bit, but she's very important to this project. And then Jesse Mounier, he's a Kailua boy. He just graduated from Stanford. That's a picture of me and Jesse in Santiago in Chile, where I had the opportunity to work for 3 months with Jesse when he studied abroad. And he has worked extensively on environmental issues, worked with WIPA on Kauai, and has done a lot of different environmental restoration projects. He's currently living in Kailua, and he's going to be also assisting with the project, and he can serve as a liaison with the community and also may help a little bit with the sampling. So that's our team, our 4-person team right now. And so I want to give you some background on this project. So we are going to be studying pathogen pollution at Castle Beach. So we're not going to be studying nutrient pollution or algal blooms right now, although those may be an issue at Castle Beach. Initially, we're just going to be focusing on pathogen pollution. And we're also not focused on the area around Kaelepulu Stream. My mom lives on that stream and I grew up on that stream. I used to swim in it and my kids currently fish in it. I know how gross it is. And I know that it impacts water quality there at the beach parks, but that's not the focus of this particular study, but maybe in the future, it's something else we can work on. Just to give you some background, usually we measure concentrations of fecal indicator bacteria to assess water quality at beaches. And those bacteria indicate the presence of feces, but they're not actually harmful to humans. So like in Kailua Bay, Hawaii DOH goes out and they measure enterococci in the bay. And that's when they decide to put up the signs or not that say the water is safe or not safe to swim. And you guys all know that there have been recent exceedances of enterococci standards in Kailua Bay, suggesting that DOH knows there's an issue. And we also know there's been a lot of brown water advisories, during which they don't measure enterococci. You guys all know about the motivation behind this study, but recently there's been a lot of news about poor water quality in Kailua, and you all are concerned about it. People living next to the beach have noticed and are concerned about it. So that's the motivation for this work. You guys know Kailua more than me, but I also am familiar with Kailua. I was just there last week. And grew up in this area, but we know that there are several sources just by our knowledge of the site. Some of them are wastewater treatment plants, which you obviously know about, and their discharge. There are a large number of cesspools around Castle Beach, here shown in red. There's also the marsh and the stream here. And then there's these purple triangles are where the DOH sometimes monitors water quality in Kailua Bay. You guys are familiar with the wastewater treatment plants. We know that there are 2 of them and that they have had operational issues recently, and that they share the same discharge pipe. So there's been in the news a lot of information about how the wastewater treatment plants may not be meeting their discharge requirements. So that's an obvious potential source of enterococci to this area around Castle Beach. The cesspools also are an important potential source. Cesspools, I guess we have a diagram later, but we're definitely interested in how they might contribute enterococci or other pathogens to Castle Beach. And then there's also the possibility that the marsh could be a source of enterococci. It's a very important habitat for water birds, but they can also contribute indicator bacteria, fecal indicator bacteria, as well as nutrients to water. And my group has done some previous research on the stream here, Kawainui Stream, and we have found Salmonella, Campylobacter, Staph aureus, adenovirus, and norovirus, all human pathogens in that stream. We don't know what the source is for sure, but we know that that stream can contain human pathogens in it. So in Kailua Bay, the DOH has 3 official monitoring sites at Kalamas, where you guys were talking about earlier, at Castles, and also down by Kailipulu Stream here. And they have different frequencies of monitoring, not very often at all at Castles and Kalamas, but at Kailua, they do it weekly, which is still not very often considering how many people use the beach. They test for enterococci and Clostridium perfringens. And as you know, the samples are not collected during brown water advisories, which occur often, even maybe today or definitely yesterday. So the question that we have motivating this study is, are fecal indicator bacteria at Castle Beach from human fecal contamination? And fecal indicator bacteria, like the ones that DOH measures, like enterococci, can come from many different sources. They can be present in sand, in grass, birds, other animals, and humans. But fecal indicator bacteria like enterococci from humans are the most important because they indicate the highest health risk, because they usually are accompanied by pathogens that can make people sick. So we can use new tools called microbial source tracking targets that can help us identify the sources of enterococci or fecal pollution. And these source tracking markers are actually like pieces of DNA that are in bacteria that are specific to a different host. So there is a certain marker for bird feces, a certain marker for human feces, and they are very specific to the host. So we are planning to use these types of tools to help us figure out and differentiate if contamination at Castle Beach is actually coming from humans or not. So the objectives of our work are, 1, we're going to conduct a pretty extensive monitoring campaign to measure fecal indicator bacteria levels at Castle Beach and adjacent to Castle Beach. And then we're going to evaluate the origin of fecal contamination at the beach using microbial source tracking. So the timeline for the work that we're planning to do for this particular project is the last week of January. Sarah and I are coming, and we're going to work with Ella, and we're going to do some initial sampling for enterococci along all of Castle Beach, up on the other side of Kaiwanui Stream, along the stream. And we'll do that during different tidal conditions at night, because we know that sunlight can suppress levels of these bacteria, and we want to measure them when they're the highest. So we'll be doing that, some blitz, spatially intensive sampling 4 different times during that weekend in January. And then using that data, we're going to select some of those sites, which Ella will then monitor, perhaps with the help of Jesse, for the next 4 to 5 months. Twice a week, she'll measure enterococci at a subset of those sites. So we'll pick sites that seem to be most commonly impacted by high levels of enterococci, and she'll monitor those consistently over this time period to give us a sense of the types of temporal variability that we should expect in the data. Based on what we learn from that, we will come back and do more sampling to test for a variety of different microbial source tracking markers that will help us determine the source of the enterococci. And we will also be testing, I think, perhaps for some human pathogens. We're still finalizing that. But we'll be using the data that we collected in January, as well as the data that Ella is collecting, to help choose where and when to sample, so that we collect data on the most impacted locations and days. And then Sarah will be analyzing those samples. She's going to use PCR, digital PCR, to do that, and that will take place over the second part of the year. And we know that we'll all be very anxiously waiting for her results. So hopefully she'll be very fast and efficient at her laboratory work. So we, working with the community is really important in all of the work that we do in my research group. So we really value your input. We'd like to hear from you if you have any suggestions for sampling locations. If you see anything weird that you want to report, take a picture. You can email Sarah at her email address here. You can email me. And then I also wanted to say that, besides Ella and Jesse, who are living in Kailua at the present time, I also am planning to involve my mom and my sister to the extent that they're willing to help, especially during emergencies, as well as Levani when there's an emergency situation, and other friends have offered to help. Also welcome involvement of those of you interested in helping. I also have friends and colleagues at Hawaii Department of Health. In particular, Myron Honda is someone that I've worked with in the past, and we will be meeting with him when we come at the end of January, going through our study design, and the goal is to keep him informed, allow him to comment and make suggestions. We would like for him to feel like he is engaged in this project and will believe the results of the project when we go to him and show them the results, that he won't say, well, you did this without ever talking to us, so we don't believe it. We really want to involve him and make him feel heard in the study design and bought into it. We also will be, I know Merritt Kurz and Tao Yan, they're both professors at UH pretty well. Sarah and I will be going to meet with them. They also do this kind of research to get their input. They've also offered, their lab space, and we also want them to feel engaged and that they can participate as well and share their thoughts about the study design. And then we also are planning to involve colleagues. We have a colleague who works in the research division at EPA, who's also going to be collaborating with us on this project, but he's in the research division at EPA. So I feel confident that, by involving all these groups, that hopefully the outcome of the study will be something that both the community, the Department of Health, and other academics will feel good about the results being valid and logical. And then, as I mentioned, Sarah is doing this as part of her PhD. So at the end of the day, she will be writing a scientific paper about this project and submitting it to a peer-reviewed journal, and it will get published in that peer-reviewed journal. So that's sort of important for her degree progress. But ultimately, I completely agree with Levani, is that I hope that the information we provide, whether we show that humans do not contribute to poor water quality at Castle Beach, or that they do, that those results can help you either, get some action or improvements in water quality, or increased monitoring, for example, or if we don't find any evidence of human input, that, maybe it's just from the birds, that will make you feel perhaps slightly better about the poor water quality. But, we don't know what we're going to find. So we're very curious, and we'll definitely come back and share with you as we go along here.
All right. Thank you so much, Ali. That was informative. And what I appreciate as someone who often does public speaking is the way that you were able to take something that could be considered pretty complicated and distill it down for those of us who aren't hardcore scientists to understand. So I appreciate that. Just wanted to reiterate that something that's important is to use the science to drive the policy. The community is kind of the bridge. So if we understand it and we understand how to interpret it, and it's done well, And I don't mind, that's part of scientific method to do randomized studies, right, Ali? So you could call on us. We'll jump in and help. But the community engagement is a really big part of this, because what I've learned in community work is we really need to pressure the appropriate agencies and, still lift up that they do work, but they often need the community to kind of push and prod and encourage and demand so that we see the change that we want to see. And this is such a worthwhile cause. So thank you, Ali, Sarah. We hope that you are going to feel better. We look forward to actually hearing your voice and seeing your face. I'm going to open it up for questions. And Katie, I know that you and Kellyanne are noting the questions in the chat. So if you can chime in every now and then and say there's a question from so-and-so. At this time, I saw someone who had their hand up and they took it down. Who would like to ask the first question? Kellyanne.
Oh, I was just wondering if you've checked out the data from the Blue Water Task Force, the Surfrider. They do tests, I think, near the area in Kaimalino weekly when they can.
Sarah, I'm pretty sure Sarah looked into it. She's nodding. Yes, she has gotten the data and looked at it. Yeah.
I think that if there was anyone who could be of a good resource, it might be reaching out to them, especially the person who samples. And they're also like a network of folks involved in that organization. I think they're in this call probably, but that would be really good resources. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kellyanne. And folks, when you ask your question or give a comment, please do just introduce yourself so we know who you are. Other questions or hands?
Almost everybody in the room.
Or decide to pick somebody. Okay,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes,
Since
please.
no one else chimed in,
yourself.
there are four other questions here. When
Your name?
my name is Michael Brazil, and I live a few blocks away on Kailua. When you mentioned that samples were not taken when the water was brown, even though it would be taken weekly or bi-weekly, is that for any other reason than not wanting to know the results?
I mean, I
Safety.
think you need to talk to Myron at DOH to get the answer to that. My guess is that it's related to not having a lot of resources and just thinking, oh yeah, it's bad. Like we know it's bad if it's brown. And so we're only going to test it when we don't know if it's brown. Or when we don't know. And it's
But it sounds like you really don't want the data because the data is damning.
That's
I
not
mean,
them.
I want the data. I want the
No, I don't mean you. I'm
Like they're gonna say.
no. That's why we're glad you're here.
yeah.
Yeah, I had the identical question, and it would seem as though if it's bad, it's bad, but it should be measured to know how bad it is.
And relatedly, I was reading about the bads. The water was really horrible last spring here. I read that it was 6 times past safety level, and readings were taken, and it was said that they just didn't know what the source was and they took samples along the bay. And if you want to know the source, I would think you would want to get into a boat and take readings at various locales all through the bay and see where the highest readings were, and you'd get a really good indication of whether it was coming from the marine base or for water treatment or from one of the estuaries.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that their limit, like, it's unfortunate, but they probably made that decision based on limited funding and staffing, but that's the way that we would approach, that's the way that we're approaching this water quality problem, is that, first we need to identify we're like forensic scientists here. We're like CSI of water quality. Like we're coming in, we're gonna work with Ella and we're gonna like do a blitz sampling and we're gonna figure out when it's high and where it's high, which locations and which times. And then you like, you know, it's like a mystery, and you know, maybe it's not really a complicated mystery, but I don't think that academics have the luxury of approaching problems like that, but I don't know that government agencies do. But that seems like a really great approach for that you described, and that's what we're gonna do.
There's a
Thanks.
question, will you be testing for Clostridium?
We're not planning to test for Clostridium right now, but we could add it if we want to later. We definitely have the capability. We've done it a lot, for better or worse.
Gary Weller. Go ahead, Gary. You're on mute, though. You have to unmute.
Okay, in 1974, I lived in Kailua for a couple of years. And back then, Monday through Friday, you could walk on the beach and probably not see anybody. And maybe on the weekends, it would be full. And now, during the summer months here and the tourist months, that beach is one of the most busiest beaches on the island. And it only has very limited resources for bathrooms. And so your study, is it going to include throughout the summer too, so we get an indication of possibly how many people are going to the bathroom in the water and not really going and using the facilities that are very slim along the whole Kailua Beach area?
Yeah, do you happen to know where we can get like beach visitation numbers? I'd be curious to see if those are available. Are there any counts? I mean, the lifeguards might do counts, right? I would be interested. And actually, I know a lifeguard at the beach. So maybe I can ask her.
There was,
The University of Hawaii did a pretty intensive study on tourism on Kailua Beach a couple of years ago. I think I probably still have it, or maybe Lavani does, but we can
or
get.
Bill has it, because I know he's referenced it before, and it was like a carrying capacity. I think it was angled in that direction, you know, carrying capacity study of Kailua Beach. Bill, maybe we can get it to Ally or link her up.
One thing that I wanted to tell you guys is that like maybe 7 years ago, I wrote a grant to NIH to do an epidemiology study at Kailua Beach to like study if there was a greater risk of getting sick if you like swam or paddled in the beach versus if you didn't. But NIH didn't fund the study, and they wouldn't fund it because they said they didn't think there was enough people at the beach. That was like 7 years ago. I also wanted to make a note about funding. So I'm funding this project out of like some unrestricted funds that I have. So I just want to be clear that there's like DOH is not paying for this study, like Clorox is not paying for this study. So we don't have to like listen to anyone funding the study when we decide what we want to do. We can really just focus on like what's best for the science. So I forgot to mention that.
Ally, another question, will you be testing for non-bacteria indicators?
Sarah, I guess I'll answer for you. Yes, we are going to be we're going to be measuring 2 viruses. One is called the brown rugose tomato virus, and the other is the pepper mild mottle virus. Those are vegetable viruses, and they are highly abundant in human feces because we eat so many peppers and so many tomatoes. So they're actually good indicators for human feces. So we will be testing for those.
Okay. Thank you. Stan, go ahead. Just unmute yourself.
Did I understand you correctly when you said that there were several violations from the Marine Corps, the Castle Beach part of the bay, and the fine was $250,000 for each violation. Who collects those funds, and have they been collected? And if not, the $250,000 is not any that doesn't appear to be a deterrent. Also, you could literally stand on the shore, and on many days when we get brown water, and literally watch the water flow and change color before your eyes to brown. And I assume from what you said that brown water supports or entertains some dangerous bacteria. And what do we do about that? I mean, how is there any mitigation projects to stop that? Because I see a lot of it does flow from the military base, and they seem to be contributing. This is not an attack on the military, and I don't mean it as that. I'm just looking for where the source of a lot of this pollution comes from. And if we have high fines and they're not collected, that actually encourages the continuation of this project, because people are not concerned with losing their money. So
Yeah,
are these funds being collected, and where do the funds go? And how about the Visitors Bureau? They bring it's a main attraction. You can go to the beach any day, and there are busloads of visitors. Check-in at the hotels is until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. A lot of these flights arrive, especially from the east, from the west, I'm sorry, and they just deposit the people at the beach for the entire day. And
Stan, if I may interject,
yes,
and just ask if you have a specific question for Ally or
are
Sarah.
these fines
and there's
being
other people.
collected? And if so, by whom and where is that money, the fines going? These are bills up with so many violations, $250,000 times several violations, adds up to quite a sum of money to be able to do.
So Dan, Rep Hussey Burdick actually asked that question. Hi, Rep Hussey Burdick.
Okay.
And she can tell you, we asked this question because I too wanted to know where was the money going and where are they getting the money. And so Rep Natalia, if you don't mind just chiming in, and then we're going to go to questions from Martha Ruth, and there's folks at the table at the district park. Thank you, Stan, for that. Go ahead, Natalia.
Thank you, Stan. I'll just really quickly let you know that the fine goes into the Emergency Response Revolving Fund. The military base had some exceedances. I think it was 2020-ish. It was a few years ago. The more recent exceedances were from the Kailua wastewater treatment plant, and the Kailua wastewater treatment plant was actually fined $434,000. I will follow up to make sure that those fines have actually been paid out. And if you put your email address, I guess in the chat, can somebody get that to me? I'll follow up. They do. Thank you.
I can get it to you. Yeah. But the point is, we don't really want to have to always be fining. We want to rectify the problem. And I know one of the things, Ally, that they are proposing or that they are doing is to put in some UV system. Now, if you've been following the news, the UV system over at Pearl Harbor broke or something, and there was a bunch of sewage that was released on the other side of our island. Yeah, this is a challenge. Anyway, let's go to Martha German, followed by Ruth Yender, and then let's go to folks in the room over at the park, and then we'll bounce back to you, Gary, trying to get as many voices as we can. Go ahead, Martha.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Martha German. I'm on the executive team of the Windward Coalition. As well, I've been sampling for the Blue Water Task Force since early 2019. We sample every other Sunday. My sample site is Kailua, which is where the stream meets the water, meets the Kaneohe Bay. I typically have extremely high samples. We're sampling for Enterococcus. We as Blue Water Task Force volunteers are supplementing the Department of Health samples. We sample during groundwater events. We sample every other Sunday year round. So we're getting significant data for Blue Water Task Force Surfrider Foundation. I recently accepted a position of co-captain for a grant-sponsored study, which is going to be done before, during, and after heavy rain events, brown water events, and king tide events. So it includes my site, which I do every other week. And we identified a couple of weeks ago another 6 or 7 sites in the Kailua watershed area. So we are specifically doing that area. There are 4 other sites on Oahu as part of this grant. So just wanted to mention that to you folks.
Thank you, Martha. And please make sure that we have your contact information because I'd like to connect you to Sarah. And Ally, if you can make sure that you just email me, Martha. My email is in the chat, levani.knb. You can get it from Eileen also. Okay, we're going to go to Ruth.
Hey, hi. So I actually have a question for the researchers. And that is, well, you mentioned birds, but I was wondering, will you be able to discern any contribution from other animals? Like I see a lot of, I walk the beaches there a lot, and I see a lot of dog walkers. And recently, and unfortunately more often than I'd like, I see that people that aren't paying attention to their dogs don't notice that they're pooping on the beach and they don't pick it up. If I'm able to catch them, I ask them to, but sometimes they go off too fast, you know? And I'm thinking quantity wise, when it's right there by the water, that might not be insignificant. So I was just wondering if that's something that you'll be able to tell or you'll be looking at. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have a dog marker, and so we may be able to do that. Sarah and I will discuss it. And thank you. Yeah, well, one of the great things about the microbial source tracking markers is that once we have the nucleic acids, like the DNA and RNA from the sample, we can run a bunch of different assays on it. So we could even run things we hadn't planned to run if we see things and collect and notice that there's a potential source that we haven't considered up to that point. So thanks.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay, we're going to go to folks in the room, and Kelly and Katie, Kellyanne and Katie, if you can just help me. I'm seeing hands. I don't know who the hands belong to, so feel free to call out. Just want to do a time check, folks. We have about 9 minutes, unless Ally and Sarah can stay over a few minutes. I knew there'd be a lot of interest in this. So go ahead, Kellyanne and Katie, I'm going to rely on you. Are there any questions in the room?
You hear me?
Yep, sorry.
Is this working?
Okay, start over.
Okay, hi, I'm Daniel Brown, and thanking you all for your work in this project. I'm interested in the sampling location, and I hope you do, include the boat ramp, because in the past fall, they've collected what was surface runoff and put it into undergrounding and one source out into the bay south of the boat ramp. And I think that would be significant. I also hope you reach out to the youth, perhaps at the high schools in their scientific programs, to perhaps participate in any way, maybe just getting their feet wet, getting samples, whatever that would stir their interest and perhaps education. The other thing to me is, as a paddler since 1957, I still go 3 times a week paddling, and I would like to have up to date risk samplings and readouts, perhaps on a website, so I can just go to the beach, get on my phone, and decide if I'm going to risk it that day or not. So thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I didn't get your name. What was your name, sir?
Daniel
Daniel.
Brown's the last name.
Daniel Brown. Okay. Please make sure that the committee members have your email address or phone number so we can get in touch with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else who's sitting there? Yes, that's not Cosette. Is that Dr. Jenks?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes, hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Linda Jenks, and I want to thank you very, very, very much for your interest in our water quality issues here. So I welcome you. We, as a group up on Kailua Pond or Enchanted Lake, have also been active in doing water quality sampling. And so if there's a way that we can share data and contribute to your information in any way, we would be happy to do that. I'm interested, really excited that you're able to look at the difference between enterococcus from humans versus birds and wildlife, which is pretty significant here in our islands. We were trying to get a sucralose test because sucralose is a non-natural occurring compound that's only found where there's human waste. So we were trying to do kind of a quick and easy test to distinguish the two, but it sounds like you have much more sophisticated DNA testing, which we're excited to hear about and would love to know more. I'm curious if you're going to be measuring upstream towards the Kawanui Marsh, because a lot of vegetation comes down from Kawanui Marsh. And I used to be under the impression that a lot of the brown water that was coming down at that end of Kailua Beach was contamination from the sewage treatment plants. But I've learned that it's actually a lot of loose vegetation that in big rains gets washed down into the bay from Oniava there, that canal, and that there's a lot of tannins in that particular type of vegetation which turn brown and look a lot like sewage when we've had big rainfalls bringing stuff down. So I think there'd be a tremendous value in testing all the way up Oniava Canal towards Kawanui Marsh to show the changes in what we have there. So we can help show where some of the sources are for this contamination. So
Yeah,
I think
Great
that's
point.
about-
We'll definitely do that. And I'm glad you mentioned the sucralose because one of my colleagues in my department at Stanford wants to measure sucralose in our samples, Bill Mitch. And so Sarah and I will follow up with him and see if we can bring a few pilot samples back for him and then go from there.
Okay. And I will email you my information so that if you need access to our testing, which has been done all the way down Kailua Stream, down through the berm into the canal. We have tested where Hamakua Canal comes into our streams. We have done extensive testing in the lake. So we have a good database built at this point. So love to share.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Jenks. I see a hand. Was that Kellyanne? Or someone in the back?
no,
Steve Becker?
Yeah, Steve Trecker. I just wondered if you could give us sort of a broad, general idea in terms of quantity of risk. You mentioned that you're looking for human pathogens and that's the highest level of risk, but how does that compare with other sources of pathogens? outside of humans? I mean, is human pathogen problem 100% worse than every other type of pathogen, 200% or 500%? Or are you able to say that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So logically, the idea is this: most human viruses are the most infectious. Like some of them is like one virus can make you sick. And human viruses are only associated with human feces. And most of the time we don't get viruses from animals, but of course then you're thinking, what about avian flu and all that? Like, yeah, there's some spillover events that are really important. But aside from those, human feces contains human viruses, and those are super infectious. There are bacteria that are present in animal feces, like Salmonella and Campylobacter. The infectious dose for those is like 1,000. So you need 1,000 bacteria to get infected with Salmonella, as opposed to like one norovirus to like get, really violent diarrhea and vomiting. So it's hard to answer your question, because we'd have to say that you have the same level of contamination like with respect to enterococci from a bird versus a human. The risk is like, I could tell you a number, but I don't have it memorized, but I would say like 100 to 1,000 times worse than exposure to bird feces.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's just like, I could calculate it. I've done it before, like with a sophisticated model, but I haven't memorized the results.
Okay, so we have someone's asking about runoff from Kapa'a Quarry. Are you going to be testing any sites where you would be catching some of that? Because I've shared this with Allie before, that we do have concerns. It's an industrial area. There's a stream there. Often there's flooding on the roadways. So do you intend to test that high up, or where some of that is going to come down into the water?
I mean,
That's the
I'm not
question.
sure, but I noticed that Jesse just joined the call, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but he's going to go spec out some of our sampling locations, and maybe Jesse, you can think about like the quarry and whether that's sampleable, but I'll ask you later too.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I have a few spots in mind near the quarry that could be good to sample, but we can discuss it more later.
Thanks, Jesse.
I have a question just regarding the sampling.
Yes,
Can
can you say your name?
My name's Jill Williams. Regarding the sampling sites, if you have the currents of Kailua Bay, are you going to take that into account? Because like if you sample only down near castles, but maybe the current is bringing it out from the outflow by the boat ramp, and you haven't sampled the boat ramp. I mean, do we know the tracking of the currents in Kailua Bay, and will you take that into consideration, that where you're taking the sample, it might not be the source of the contamination? Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, if you have any information about like the typical circulation in the Bay, and Sarah, you and I should also look in the peer-reviewed literature to see what's been published on that. I'm sure that you can characterize it under certain conditions, like when there's a lot of wind swell and big waves, the current is like clockwise versus counterclockwise. You have the literal current from the waves. So we'll have to look into that. But if anyone has any local observations, or you'd like to share something, please let us know. Sometimes those are more valuable than scientific papers.
Yeah, so we can also talk to folks who are out in the ocean, or even fishermen. 2 comments. Gretchen says, we know the current runs from Lanikai end of the beach towards castles. Okay, someone else is shaking their head. Okay, so that needs to be found
under
out.
certain conditions, or like a certain distance from shore, like the literal current, like in the surf zone, can be different from what's outside, like near Flatiron.
Yeah, right, where the breaks are. And also someone else made the comment, Lowry made the comment that, we also have the challenge of there being homeless encampments on the periphery of Kapa'a Quarry. So this has happened in other parts of Kailua under bridges near the waterways and Hamakua side, Hamakua wetland. And so, right, at times there are very large homeless encampments. So that also could be a source. I'm going to ask Gary to be concise. There is another committee, but this is meeting that starts, but this has been a special opportunity for us. So I just want to be thoughtful of the committee that's waiting there at the district park. Gary, ask your question, and then I'm just going to do a popcorn style for anyone who has not asked a question. If you'd like to make a brief comment or suggestion, that would be the time to do so. I know I have several people on this call who regularly come to my meetings and they're very quiet right now, but this is your opportunity. So Gary, go ahead and lead us off, and then anyone else who wants to chime in and comment, either raise your hand or just go ahead and say something before we go to closing. Go ahead, Gary.
Very recently, the board has gotten a Google account and they have a Google Drive. For years, I've been doing tons of research for the board. I kind of like doing that. And I have a folder on my Google Drive that I will ask Bill if I can transfer to the Kailua Neighborhood Board folder of almost 30 years of research on Kailua Beach. And so I'll give you access to that if you think it would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Gary. So does anyone have any kind of parting thoughts? Or maybe I should go to Allie first and say, do you have any thoughts that you would like to share after hearing all of the questions and some of the feedback? I'm sure there's much more.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening and for your comments and sharing your knowledge with us. So if you have ideas or observations, please send them to me or Sarah. We're going to keep track of everything. And thank you. And we look forward to working with you in the future. And I know I had asked Levani also if it would be possible to get like a blessing from some kapuna before we start this study. And so I know she's looking into that, but that's something else that I think is important to us if possible.
Yeah. Yes, we will work on that. Doug, I saw you raise your hand. Go ahead. You have to unmute.
Yes, I just know I'm speaking for a lot of the other persons in this community, just to say a super huge thank you for undertaking this study. It's going to be incredibly valuable to our community. The type of study that you're doing is unassailable, and that data is going to be rock solid, and it's going to provide our community with the information we need to transfer into the political realm to turn the situation around so the pollution in Kailua Bay is finally eliminated. And this means a tremendous amount to this community, and we are very grateful that you're putting the time and the energy into this. So a big thank you.
Thank you.
Also, there is a comment from Michelle who says she launches her outrigger canoe at Kaha Park onto the canal, and often there's oil on the surface of the water. And she's saying she assumes this comes from street runoff, but maybe this should also be a concern. I know it's not a pathogen, but if it's a pollutant, we know that they come off the roadways. So thank you for that comment, Michelle. Anyone else, maybe someone who doesn't even have their screen on, if you want to just say anything before we close. I see some hands. Okay, go ahead. We'll go over to the district park. Oh, Shireen. Shireen is a researcher. And Doug was a part of Save the Bay. Where was it, Doug? You were part of the Save the Bay Coalition.
You mean in Santa Monica?
Yes.
No, you just know about it.
Well, I wasn't an active member. By the time I became aware of it, they were already well underway. And we do have close personal friends who were on the board of that whole system there in Santa Monica Bay and interacted with the legislature there with great success. And there's a lot that we can learn from how they went about their process and discovered things that worked in their community.
Yeah, so I'm just bridging because you often bring your experiences into our committee. Okay, District Park folks, Shireen, you had something that you wanted to share.
Thank you very much for initiating this useful and big study. Appreciate it. I'd like to be involved in helping, and I have one suggestion. If you need information on the ocean current wave patterns and wind patterns, we can consult Dr. Chip Fletcher, who is the Dean of SOAS, and he also lives in Kailua too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion, Shireen. Okay. I don't see any other hands. Am I missing anyone, Kellyanne or Katie? Natalia, thank you so much, Rep, for being here and for sharing about this. Again, folks, I do want to keep you in the loop. I can't do that if I don't have your contact information. If you feel uncomfortable messaging us, you can send me an email later, layvani.knb@gmail.com. And I can also put you in touch with Sarah. I don't want us to like bombard them, but you will get a lot of community participation if you ask for it, Allie. So we'll try to make that very fluid and just keep us in the loop as far as your procedure and your timings. And we welcome you back, and we're looking forward to seeing you in person. If there is nothing further, I am going to adjourn this meeting, and I really want to extend gratitude to you and Sarah, and know that we are all doing this with pono intention. It's not to call any one agency or person out, but you know, we're doing this for the future, for future paddlers, for future children, for future families. And that is our kuleana. We have to do it, and we have to do it now. This is the time. So thank you all for being here. I will see you at our next meeting on the second Thursday in February. And thank you so much. And Allie, just connect with me if you have to. If you need anything. And you too, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Great job, everybody.
Bye.
I wanted to tell you, there is an existing website. It's not.
Yeah. Who was that who was just speaking? Oh, I don't know. Okay. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Bob. Thanks for the question. Thanks for staying up. Going to stop recording.
Aloha, Lavani.
Aloha.